Hello and welcome into Chatterbox Reacts. This is where Chatterbox reacts. And today we are reacting to the Ring of Honor nominees for the class of 2024 Cincinnati Bengals. The name of list includes Jim Breech, the all-time scorer for the Cincinnati Bengals, James Brooks, the running back that got it done during that era, Cris Collinsworth, Corey Dillon, David Fulcher, Tim Krumrie, Dave Lapham, Max Montoya, Lemar Parrish, Bob Trumpy, and Reggie Williams. Reed Mouse, Jacob Tizzett, and Casey McAllister on this video. Jacob, we'll start with you. Out of all these names, two guys you can put in the Ring of Honor, who are your front runners?
This year is pretty easy for me because it's the two names that I voted for last year. I voted for Corey Dillon and Bob Trumpy last year, and I'm going to do it again this year. Obviously, Ocho Cinco was a shoe-in last year, but those two names stick out to me out of the list. Obviously, a lot of great Bengals here. Bengals still playing catch-up, just adding the Ring of Honor about 3 years ago. But Corey Dillon, the Bengals' leading rusher in his career by over 1,500 yards. James Brooks, second with just over 6,400. Corey Dillon up over 8,000. He's clearly the best statistical running back in the Bengals' history. And then Bob Trumpy, number 11 in receiving yards in the history of the Bengals as a tight end that played in the late 60s and early 70s. So what he was able to do in his time period when passing the ball wasn't nearly as prevalent certainly sticks out to me.
Corey Dillon was one of, if not the most dominant backs when he played, obviously set the single game record at the time. And then Bob Trumpy, a lot of people consider him the genesis of what the modern tight end is, where he was an efficient part of the offense. I like both those picks. Casey?
Yeah, I'm going to steal one of them, Bob Trumpy. One of the main reasons is because he's a friend of the show. He came on our show and was a great interview. But yeah, I mean, he was a very vital part of the Bengals when he played in the 70s. For me, I want to get the older generation in before they pass on. I don't want another Ken Riley situation ever. So that's why I have guys like Corey Dillon excluded out. I have Bob Trumpy and Lemar Parrish. Lemar Parrish has 47 interceptions in his career as a Cincinnati Bengal, 2 touchdowns. The dude, besides Ken Riley, was a very dominant corner with the Cincinnati Bengals. He is right up there with some of the great legends and just not really well recognized. So I think he deserves to be in the Bengals Hall of Fame.
You know, it's funny you bring up recognition because that's when it comes to my two picks, I thought of, like, when you think of Cincinnati Bengals in the public eye, you think of two people first and foremost. Here's a guy who, Cris Collinsworth. You got to do Cris Collinsworth. I mean, what other Cincinnati Bengal is on the national scale every single week during the football season? So you got to do Cris, and also he was a great player. Like, it's not like this is undeserving. I'm just saying that because of his broadcasting career. I'm just saying it's recognition, and when you think of the Cincinnati Bengals, Cris Collinsworth comes to the top of the list. And the other guy is the guy who does radio games here in town, and that's Dave Lapham. How many memories do you have, us Bengals fans have, of a Dave Lapham call? He's not for everybody. But what would you do without listening to the Bengals on the radio and hearing, oh, God, no, you got to have Dave Lapham. Dave Lapham, Cris Collinsworth, these are two guys that when you think of the Cincinnati Bengals, they are at the top of your list. Now, are there anybody on this list, like if you had to guess who gets in, right? We all have our picks. If you had to guess who's a shoe-in this year or who do you think's going to get in, who do you think it's going to be, Casey?
I mean, I think it's your picks, Reed. I think it is Dave Lapham and Cris Collinsworth.
Really?
I think they're the most recognizable figures outside the organization. Cris Collinsworth is an announcer for NBC Sports. And Dave Lapham, I think if you ever listen to the radio, you know who he is if you're listening to a Bengals game. So not outside the organization, but you get it. Not a player. I think that has a lot to do with it. And they're also like Bengals, right? They didn't leave the organization poorly. They didn't get traded away. These guys played here for the majority of their careers and retired as Bengals. So that's why I think that those two should be in.
One of my favorite Cris Collinsworth stories is that his mom cried when he got drafted by the Bengals. So a lot of confidence from old Madre there in the Cincinnati Bengals. Who do you think is going to be?
I like Casey said, I think your two picks stick out because everyone else, you can go statistically, sure, there might be some players who are better than Cris Collinsworth and Dave Lapham, but there's not two better ambassadors to the franchise on a national scale than those two. Obviously, Chad Johnson got in last year and what he's been able to do on social media and everything like that for the Bengals has grown their image a lot. But those two guys, Lapham on the radio and Collinsworth on TV, certainly spread Bengals propaganda better than almost anyone.
I just don't see a world in which Corey Dillon doesn't get in. And I know that there's like some bad blood, I guess. Like there's some weird thing, awkward between Corey Dillon and the organization. But he's the best running back in a proud organization with a lot of good running backs. James Brooks on the list as well. So I don't know. It just seems like Corey Dillon's the best player. At least I think he's the best player on this list. So let's put the best player in. I think Corey Dillon, if he doesn't get in this year, he'll get in very soon, along with, I think, one of the broadcasters would in. So give me Corey Dillon and give me Dave Lapham because he's still on the broadcast here in town. Hey, let us know in the comments. Who do you think is going to get in the Ring of Honor this year? Give us a like and subscribe. We'll see you next time on Chatterbox.